This is ESPN Esports. I'm Arda Ocal with Emily Rand and Jacob Wolf. It appears that Nadeshot will not be able to stream Valorant on Tuesday, but only Tuesday. This is a little bit of a complicated story. Jacob, why don't you catch us up on how we got here, and then we'll give our opinions because we have a lot of them.
Yeah, so on a stream with Cloaksy, the very popular player, Nadeshot said that he was asked not to stream Valorant tomorrow on Tuesday, the opening day of the closed beta for Valorant, because there were several LCS and LEC team owners who were very frustrated with the fact that he had access to the beta in the first place. So that ask, as I understand my reporting around the league, is that there were no team executives or team management that were participating in the closed alpha segment that was a week ago, or a week and change ago, from the 27th to the 29th of March, where there were top level people playing Valorant for the first time. There were pros from Counter-Strike, there were pros from Overwatch, there were pros from Rainbow Six and Fortnite and others, all participating in this closed alpha beta period. Obviously, some of our colleagues participated in that also. And the idea was that it was supposed to be a esports team management free environment that allowed for people to compete, pros to figure out who would be the top people, and a lot of 100 Thieves management, Nadeshot included, but also some others, were participants in this. And a lot of LCS and LEC team owners felt that that will give them a unfair advantage of knowing who some of the best players will be in Valorant come release, public release, and when the esports scene for Valorant kicks off, which is some of the concern. So, yeah, it's not a ban. Nadeshot's not restricted from even playing. He can play tomorrow when it goes into closed beta. But the thing is that there's a little bit of frustration because they feel like 100 Thieves is given a little bit of a leg up. I'm not agreeing with that in any sort of way, but that's the situation, is that there are several LCS and LEC team owners that are frustrated with Riot for giving 100 Thieves this level of access and not them this level of access. Yeah,
but then the punishment of him not being able to stream for one day, even if that day is important, is ludicrous. That seems such a ridiculous punishment if that is the case.
I would say the punishment, and again, they're not enforcing this. This is an ask, and I think he made that very clear when talking on Cloaksy's stream, which clearly I don't think he was supposed to even say that this was an ask, but it came up in a conversation while him and Cloaksy were playing Warzone. I think the thing is that the big thing is that it's silly. The punishment or the ask is silly. But I think there's a little bit of legs to stand on the initial frustration that exists, right? Because I think people were confused when Slasher first put out this statement, or put out what he said on Cloaksy's stream, the video clip. A lot of people were like, well, why don't they just give access to everybody else tomorrow? We're not talking about tomorrow. The problem is what happened a week ago, a little bit more than a week ago, on the 27th to 29th,
because
right?
Because he was there, right? He was there because no other team owners were there, or that kind of management, even though he sort of treads this line of being a content creator and an executive, right? Would you have invited him if you were Riot?
So this entire thing to me is so stupid. This is what happens when you have an owner who is also an insane influencer on his own, right? Nadeshot is 100 Thieves, and people will come to watch him play literally anything. And that's the draw that you have. That's one of the reasons. I'm sure 100 Thieves package to enter the LCS was really good. They seem to have a good understanding of how to do multi-level, team environment and organization. As many missteps as they had with that in the past, I don't think they've mistreated their players. I think they've all been very well taken care of while they were on the team. Their marketing, this is. They had a really good package to enter the LCS, but ultimately what you want is that brand, because it's insanely popular and people believe in it and they follow the brand itself. And Nadeshot is pretty much synonymous with that. That's why you want to have him as an LCS team owner. It's also why you want to have him in the alpha. So I also think that there are so many levels of this that I think are kind of not, I mean, dumb is probably the best way to say it, to be honest. But like, there's Nadeshot gets invited, other LCS owners get invited, which is actually unfair if you think about it. By nature, though, the system itself that you create, if you have a closed alpha and then a closed beta, is naturally unfair. Some people are going to get in and some people aren't, and that's just how it works. But then on top of all of this, esports is so chatty. Like, we already know from our own reporting internally, from the way people talk about this alpha that happened, like the alpha test, we already know people that like orgs have their eyes on. So the fact that this would give Nadeshot an actual like advantage, either competitively by not playing the game for another day, despite the fact that he's already played it, or by for scouting, is a bit ludicrous to me, because everyone's already talking about it anyway. It's not like we don't already know the names that are being thrown around on social media by teams. Some of them were even mentioned in the roundtable that our own Tyler Erzberger did the other day. Yeah. So like, it's not like this stuff is a secret. I don't know why they just honestly didn't let all LCS teams participate, because it seems like, I know Travis did a video on this as well. It seems like he brought up that there's like, with Riot, sometimes there's this weird miscommunication because so many departments are working technically together, but also independently of one another. And this seems like another one of those weird things where the messaging around it was just so weird and people weren't talking to each other. And now it's this like weird smudge on what should have been like a pristine and honestly phenomenal release, considering how many people are looking forward to this game.
I think a lot of people also were like, well, there's no other team that has a major influencer that's in the LCS or the LEC as one of the executives. Hello, have you ever heard of Ocelot? Thank you. Like, Ocelot may not be a former FPS pro, right? But like, Ocelot is a huge influencer. Why would, like, I think that's like the bottom line, right?
Ibai is with G2 and he'll be able to stream, or he was part of it, so yeah. Yeah,
but he's a different level, right? Like, he's not like a CEO of an organization in the fact that like Ocelot is, right? And Ocelot's a major influencer aside from everything else. I think the biggest thing is that Riot wants to give Valorant a completely clean slate, right? If you look at the people that did apply for the LCS and the LEC, the applicants, there were a lot of applicants that applied that ultimately did not make the cut. We had people like the Chicago Cubs apply for the LCS at one point, and they didn't make it, right? Like, even like Team Invi and some of these others who were big in other games like Counter-Strike and COD didn't make the cut when it came to the LCS and the LEC. Mm-hmm. And when you look at that, I think with Valorant, right, like, the audience is going to be different than League of Legends. The first-person shooter audience inherently is very different than League of Legends, and it will be that way for the fans too. So I think that Riot overall wants to start with a very clean slate across the board from an organizational esports perspective, right? Tons of Counter-Strike orgs that I think will want to be in Valorant that could care less about being in League of Legends, whether that be because of money or whatever else it may be, right? But I think that when you look at that, they wanted to give a clean slate, fair play to everyone. To Emily's point, that's unrealistic considering how things are handled in an alpha and beta process. But I think that's where the original frustration lies, is that they told LCS and LEC team owners in the first place, no one is going to, you're not allowed, Jack Etienne, to hang out in this Discord or Zoom, or same with Steve Aronset. And that's why they feel sort of, collectively, the LCS and LEC team owners sort of feel upset because, top executive of 100 Thieves, Nadeshot, the CEO and founder, was allowed in the door.
Why does that matter? Why does that matter? But hold on a second. Why does that matter when Courage is there and he's part of 100 Thieves and he could just say the same information to the 100 Thieves executives? Like, there's plenty of representatives from teams in that closed alpha anyway, Emily.
Well, yeah. I mean, the other thing I was going to say is I can see why other team owners would be upset. What I think is dumb is the idea that this gives a definite competitive advantage to Nadeshot as a CEO, because like I said, I think none of this has been a secret. Like, people have been talking about it since it started, never mind when the footage was released the other day. So I think that a lot of these team owners will find that they still have just as much leverage as they would have if they'd been at the alpha boot camp, especially since they just like, it doesn't require you to be in that Discord in order to reach out to these players. I do agree with Jacob's point, though, that this is going to be, I think like people are maybe overestimating the amount of overlap that is going to happen. Like, it's not like all of these LCS orgs are suddenly going to, like, they might form Valorant teams, but as the competitive scene evolves, I'm not sure if we'll see every LCS org going full in on this game. I mean, it's so new, you like can't even know, because every time a game releases now, everyone has to like rush to be at the top of it, because whoever scouts those players first does actually get a huge leg up in the scene itself.
I would also say, right, if you want to look at this is not new, this type of behavior. Look at Overwatch, right? I think that two points here. One, at the very beginning of Overwatch, competitive Overwatch, there was a closed beta, right? And a lot of the people in the closed beta were really, really good, and then they got scooped up and made teams by some big esports organizations at the time. And then ultimately those players did not become the best players in the Overwatch League a year and a half later, or a year later, right? I think Valorant will be the same. I think we will see people who are very good in this closed beta who cannot make it as an esports pro long-term, whether that be because of stress or offline competition, sort of mentally freaking them out, whatever it may be. There's a number of reasons that could happen. There will be people who are high performers here who could go on to be big influencers, like a Ninja or a Shroud or whatever, but they're not going to be top cream of the crop professional esports player, right? So that will ultimately happen. And that happened in Counter-Strike. There was this huge, or not Counter-Strike, in Overwatch, there was this huge land grab for the best players at the beginning of the Overwatch closed beta, and those people eventually didn't pan out. I would also, though, say to the point about comparing League of Legends and Valorant, that Riot does not want to be like Activision Blizzard, right? So all the teams that were in Overwatch League Season 1 got first right of negotiation, not refusal, but negotiation. They were allowed, if you were going to do, great example here is the London teams in Overwatch League and Call of Duty League, right? If you were Cloud9, part of what you negotiated for in getting the London Spitfire in the London slot in Overwatch League was that you would be given the first right of negotiation for the London spot in Call of Duty League, right? Ultimately, Cloud9 did not take that, and it was not refusal, so they couldn't have said no, but they were given first grabs at the London Call of Duty slot. That London Call of Duty slot, the London Royal Ravens, was eventually sold to Rogue, right? And Rec Global, which is a completely separate organization from Cloud9. Now, looking at that, I would say Riot doesn't want to be like that because they recognize that first-person shooter games and MOBAs are very different. There will be organizations, very few organizations, I think, will be able to be top organizations both in League of Legends and in it, especially when it's franchised, League of Legends and Valorant. There will be the Team MBs of the world who are really good in Call of Duty and who are really popular in Overwatch, right? In the Dallas Fuel and the Dallas Empire. There will be those. There will be the select few, but I would say the vast majority of people, I don't know how much overlap there will be. I would expect more of the very popular Counter-Strike organizations to be very popular in Valorant, not the League of Legends organizations.
So I would say the one exception to that will probably be China. That's all. Just because the orgs over there are so massive that they have multiple teams and everything. So if you get this game to take off in China, I think you'll see a lot of overlap there.
Which is definitely something that Riot clearly is trying to do. But going back to Nadeshot and the whole idea of an executive being in the closed alpha and then the ask for not streaming the one day, if that is the timeline and we're not missing any information there, that's ridiculous. The fact that he treads this line between content creator and executive, is invited to the closed beta or alpha because he is such a big influencer, and then the slap on the wrist is don't stream for one day. I think he and 100 Thieves will be fine. Let us know in the comments below how you feel about this. Does the punishment fit the crime? Do you think that executives should have just been allowed en masse? Should all of them be allowed?
He didn't do anything.
Like he was allowed.
Like there's no crime. He did nothing wrong.
I just want to be clear, right? Like, I don't blame him. I think a lot of people, when I was like slasher, were like, you blame Nadeshot getting popular. No, it's Riot. I don't. It's Riot. Riot should have been better about this, and they also should not have let other 100 Thieves management in the alpha, which they were. There were people who were not influencers that were 100 Thieves people that were in that alpha. Those are the people that I'm more concerned about than Nadeshot, right? That's where the unfair advantage argument comes from. But yeah, I'm not blaming Nadeshot, not blaming 100 Thieves. Right. They were invited, they participated. Riot should have been better about this.
Who should be in a closed alpha? That's another question we can ask in the chat. Should it strictly be influencers? Should it strictly be pro players? Let us know in the chat below who you think should be in a closed alpha like that moving forward. Your opinion, throw it in the comments below.